Okay, let's turn to reading some sources. I have Middle East Patterns, source number 1 here, as well as a copy of the big bookmark. While we read this source, we're going to use the bookmark to help us make sense of what's written here. Before I start reading, I want to remind myself of my purpose for reading, which is to answer the central question: which countries should be included in the Middle East? I'm going to start with reading the headnote and the attribution using the top part of the bookmark to think about who created the source, when and where it was created, the type of source, and why it was created. When I find that information, I'm going to circle it and make some notes out to the side while I read. I'll start with the attribution here at the bottom. It says, adapted from the geography textbook, Middle East Patterns, Places, People, and Politics. So one thing I can circle here is geography textbook, which tells us the type of source. Kind of like the textbooks that you might use in your social studies class. What I don't know is this a textbook from a middle school, high school level, or above, maybe even a college level. Then it says, written by Colbert Held and John Thomas Cummings in 2014. So I can also circle the when here, which is 2014, and I'm going to make a note out to the side that this was written pretty recently. 2014 is only a few years ago. I also can see the who, so I'm going to circle Colbert Held and John Thomas Cummings as the authors who wrote this. And I'm just going to make a note out to the side that there are actually two authors for this source. What I don't know is who these authors are and what's their background, and I also don't know very much about this textbook. So with a partner, read the headnote and circle any additional information that helps you answer these questions and circle them. Now it's time to turn to reading the actual source, and we'll use the middle part of the bookmark. While we read the source, we're going to focus in on just this question, the second bullet point. So we don't have to answer all these questions, just this one. What parts of the source tell you what the author or other people in the text think, want, or experience? And we're going to underline that information. I'll start with the first paragraph. It says, scholars all accept that the Fertile Crescent is the center of the Middle East. So that's what somebody thinks. I'm going to underline that. Scholars all accept that the Fertile Crescent is the center of the Middle East. They believe the core region includes the general area from Northeast Africa to South Asia. We, meaning the authors, agree that the region extends from the western border of Egypt to the eastern border of Iran, and from the Black Sea to the Arabian Sea. So that's what these two authors, Held and Cummings, think about where the Middle East region extends. And it's the same when he talks about from Egypt to Iran and Turkey down to Yemen. They're talking about this area that's in white in the map, so I'm just circling that and making a note to say authors think these countries are in the Middle East. And I'll just abbreviate ME instead of writing out Middle East. Now it's your turn. Read the second paragraph and underline any other parts of that paragraph that tell you what people in the text think, want, or experience. Okay, now that we've finished with the source, let's think about this question. What does this textbook, Middle East Patterns, help you understand about the Middle East region? With a partner, write 1 to 2 sentences in response to that question. Now it's time to think about how reliable this source is after we read. And there are some questions on the back of our bookmark that can help us to determine how reliable or trustworthy this source is. So I'll start with reliable. One thing that I know from the headnote is that the people who wrote this source are in a position to know about the issues. They're experts in geography in the Middle East, given their experiences and their work, in both for the government and having a PhD in geography. So I'm going to say the authors are experts about the Middle East and geography. Try to come up with one other reason why this source is a reliable source of information. Alright, now it's time to come up with one reason why this source may not be so reliable. So one thing I noticed in the headnote is that this was first published in 1989. And 1989 was a long time ago, almost 30 years. And I know that sometimes over time people's opinions change about which countries should and shouldn't be part of a region. So I'm going to just say that it's possible the textbook, or that this part of the textbook that talks about the Middle East is out of date, or is not updated. Even though it's been published recently in 2014, I don't know that they actually updated this part of it since 1989. It's possible. Come up with one other reason why this source may not be a reliable source of information. Alright, and then our last step is we're going to box the parts of the source that help us think about the central question. So what parts of the source help us think about which countries should be included in the Middle East? I'm going to go ahead and box what I already underlined up here in the first paragraph, where the authors say that the countries that are part of the Middle East are these countries here on the map. But there's one other piece of the source that you could box in the second paragraph. So with a partner, try to find one other thing that you could box that helps you understand what these two authors think about which countries should be included in the Middle East.